With that, let's enter the group chat. Basil Smykel is here, Democratic strategist and former executive director of the New York State Democratic Party. Stuart Stevens, a veteran of the Mitt Romney and George W. Bush presidential campaigns. He is now with the Lincoln Project. And Liz Smith, Democratic strategist and senior advisor to political organizations, Majority Democrats, and the bench. And MS Now congressional reporter Michael Schnell. What's your reaction to what we just saw?
Well, I used to work for these guys. It's incredibly depressing. And if we were talking before we went on the air, Cornyn and Tillis are never going to run again. And what's in it for them? The thing that astounds me about these moments is most politicians have pretty big egos, which that's okay. So do athletes. God knows writers do, musicians. That's fine. Why don't they see how they look? Like how humiliating it is for someone like Cornyn, who was on the Supreme Court of Texas, highly respected, a former attorney general. First, he's defeated by a guy he would have put in jail.
Ken Paxton.
Yeah, Ken Paxton. How did that work out? John, you could have stayed who you were. And now he's saying stuff that, were he on the other side, he would rip apart the argument. He's a very smart guy. And why? You're going to live the rest of your life, and this is going to be your big moment, last big moment. And I think all these guys are only going to be remembered. All the stuff they think they'll be remembered for, I think it's like segregation. They're only going to be remembered for Trump. Nobody remembers the bridges that Jim Eastland built or the loans he got for like this. He was a segregationist. And I think that's how this whole generation of Republican senators are going to go down.
Except, of course, this. We all live in a world of short-termism. Donald Trump and his inner circle, and at this point in the second term, even his outer circle, are becoming obscenely wealthy, whether it's the crypto business, whether it's private investments, whether it's knowing to invest in companies that the president is then going to have the government invest in. They find out this information, they invest, and they are becoming obscenely wealthy. We don't know for sure. We can't even necessarily guess, but we don't know that any of these guys are cutting deals like that. But the amount of money that's being made in Trump's universe, who knows? If you're John Cornyn or you're Tom Tillis and you're looking to retire, maybe you'd like to retire with a vacation house or a boat.
Yeah, well, that's how mobs work.
That's where Donald Trump learned business, right here in New York City.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And, the fact that Blanche consistently says, I'm his personal attorney, I'm his attorney, I'm his attorney. It's signaling, right? That you can make any decision you want, but recognize I'm still very close to this man. No matter what position I have, no matter what accountability you want to superimpose over my responsibilities, I am his attorney. So whatever it is that he asks me to do, I am going to continue to do. That's not just about running the department. It's also going after the people he doesn't like or blessing the people that he does like, right? And so to me, there was no other option for these guys because, as you said and as you indicated, there's a life after being elected or unelected to office that they want to have. And it's largely I imagine that the financial benefit to them to try to make, and this is the point that I think addresses your issue about the shame that they don't seem to have. In my view, they feel that the financial windfall makes it all go away in some world. And if they can get on his good side on their way out, they will find a way to do that. That doesn't improve our lives, but it certainly improves their individual lives.
But what about now even changing what the Attorney General's job is, right? Yeah. It wasn't long ago that Jeffrey Beauregard Sessions, who deeply supported Donald Trump and his politics, said, this doesn't work for me. Even Bill Barr. So Todd Blanche basically deferring to the president on everything. And then there are no consequences if the president doesn't follow that legal advice. Haven't we now changed what the role is for the Attorney General in the United States?
Of course, but Donald, this is the Trump era. This is, as you talk about progressive candidates, this is why progressives have the energy that they do, because they do not believe that any of the institutions that we hold dear are durable enough to withstand what's being done to them right now. So maybe we need to rethink them.
What's your reaction to what we watched?
So two things, with both Tillis and Cornyn, we see what they did as Craven, but I think probably in their own heads, they thought that they were showing some political courage by trying to draw a line in the sand here and get some strongly worded letter from Todd Blanche, but we've seen how much these administrations and their nominees' promises mean nothing. What did RFK Jr. promise to Bill Cassidy? Mm-hmm. He wouldn't get rid of the vaccine schedule. He wouldn't fire all those, the people on the vaccine board. What did he do? Did those things. And
then Bill Cassidy lost.
And then Bill Cassidy lost. I don't know. Maybe these guys have a humiliation kink, but when it comes to Blanche, the other thing I would say is yes, extremely, extremely loyal to Donald Trump, but so was Jeff Sessions, so was Bill Barr, so was Bill Barr, so was Pam Bondi, and you know what? There always comes a day when Donald Trump pushes the envelope too far and they're out. Like the job prospects for an attorney general in a Trump administration are not, long for this world. So I suspect we'll see a similar thing like we're seeing play out right now with Jeanine Pirro, where he will push the envelope too far, even for his personal lawyer, Todd Blanche.
Can I just ask a political question? Because to Basil's point, this is one of the reasons you are seeing these outsider, very progressive, in some cases DSA candidates get the support, because people are saying, we want fighters. But here's the thing. Even if you're the toughest fighter out there, right? Sheldon Whitehouse, who's obviously an establishment Democrat, he couldn't have been angrier. The rules are what the rules are. You could have the angriest, most burn the house down DSA candidate sitting in that room, but it wouldn't change the outcome of today's hearing.
Right. And this is what will change the outcome of this hearing. Electing more Democrats. And to elect more Democrats, we've got to expand the map and grow the tent, not just in the DSA way, but in a way where, we're talking about the midterms and elections today. Kansas has an election today. Kansas has a big Senate race. Adam Hamilton, passer, likely to come out of it. Cheap state, cheap date. Why don't we invest there? Why don't we invest there and expand the map? Why don't we become a party that, again, plays in these red states? Because until we do that and it builds some sort of a durable majority, we are going to be in this powerless position over and over and over again.
Michael, you are standing right outside that room. Let's get your reaction.
Yeah, well, Steph, we do have some more information that we're learning from right outside this room. Bill Cassidy on the other side of the hearing room. He spoke to reporters as he was heading in, or spotted by reporters. He said he has no comment still on how he's going to vote on Todd Blanche. So again, once this hits the floor, if Mitch McConnell, the senator from Kentucky, who is still recovering from his hospitalization, if he remains in rehab and not here to vote, that means Republicans can only afford to lose 2 of their own votes and still get Todd Blanche confirmed. So if Bill Cassidy is on the fence, you still have Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins who are on the fence. Again, this is not going to be a glide path. And still this morning, Bill Cassidy not saying how he's going to vote. And then one more thing, we're talking a lot about the anti-weaponization fund, about the IRS immunity. Those are, of course, the 2 key matters that Cornyn and Tillis were focused on. But one issue that is still prevalent and has been key in Todd Blanche's confirmation process is the handling of the Epstein files. Remember, when Pam Bondi, the former attorney general, had testified up here on Capitol Hill behind closed doors to the House Oversight Committee, she laid everything at the feet of Todd Blanche, saying that he was in charge of overseeing the release of documents, which by all accounts was botched. You had the names of rich and powerful individuals be blacked out, and then you had the information of survivors be left out to the public. Also, the scope of documents, it's still unclear, and many believe that not all the information has been released. Not to mention, Todd Blanche was the one who met with Ghislaine Maxwell after she was transferred to a different prison. And that is very much so prevalent today. Danny Bensky, an Epstein survivor, is right now in this hearing room as senators are talking about the confirmation of Todd Blanche. She was up here last week meeting with senators on the Judiciary Committee, dropping off copies of the Epstein files. She told reporters it would be a chilling effect to Epstein survivors across the country if Todd Blanche were confirmed. So a lot certainly going on today, but the Epstein matter is still key here and should be discussed as well.
What do you think, Stuart?
Look, I'm so glad you said this, because it's extraordinary that we have a guy, first that he's Trump's criminal defense attorney, which is pretty extraordinary. The president has a criminal defense attorney. But that he gets on a plane, spends 9 hours with the most notorious convicted pedophile of our time. Out of that comes a deal to go to a Club Fed. And I've never heard of this before. It so offended the inmates of the Club Fed that Maxwell was coming that they protested. It's like, there goes the neighborhood. Let's see, Maxwell's coming. I mean, have you ever heard of that? Like, no. This is it's not to our prison standards, and he's not even being asked about it now. Which is it's sort of this Trump technique that you advance, do something more crazy, so you have to talk about that, and then you kind of forget. Well, what about the sweetheart deal for the pedophile?
You know, in the first Trump administration, I remember speaking to someone in the administration, a senior advisor to Trump, when there was, I don't even remember what controversy or what embarrassing event happened. And I was asking, and he said to me, look up at the TV. This story will be gone tomorrow and there will be a new one. And that's exactly where we are right now, except the Epstein files and the Epstein survivors. They're not going away. They might not even be watching today's hearing. They might not know who Sheldon Whitehouse is. But a lot of people, a lot of young people who voted for Donald Trump care a lot about those Epstein files, and we're watching them disappear into the ether.
Yeah, I mean, there were these two truths that was going to happen at the base of the contemporary Republican Party. No more foreign wars and the Epstein files. So here we are. Which, if Republicans have a terrible night in November, which I think they will, probably the truth is going to go to that. It's, when you don't have any political philosophy, you don't have any sort of conviction, no theory of government, which the Republican Party doesn't have now. It is all about just getting through the next moment. And that's how Trump is. He'll say anything to get through the next moment. And what Mark Cuban said is, he's the guy at the closing time will say anything to, get somebody to go home with him.